If I were the Prince of Darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have a third of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree.
About the terrorism list, what process is afforded a U.S. citizen, not someone who's overstayed a visa, not someone who crossed the border without permission, but an American citizen, what process is currently afforded an American citizen before they go on that list?
I'm sorry, there's not a process afforded the citizen prior to getting on the list. There is a process should someone feel they are unduly placed on the list.
Yes, there is. And when I say process, I'm actually using half of the term due process, which is a phrase we find in the Constitution, that you cannot deprive people of certain things without due process. So I understand Mr. Good's idea, which is wait until your right has been taken from you and then you can petition the government to get it back. I understand that that's his idea. My question is, can you name another constitutional right that we have that is chilled until you find out it's chilled and then you have to petition the government to get it back? Is that true with the First Amendment?
Sir, there are strict criteria before.
That's not my question, ma'am. That is not my question. My question is, what process is afforded a United States citizen before that person's constitutional right is infringed? Then he's fine with doing it with the Second Amendment. My question is, how about the First? How about we not let them set up a website or a Google account? How about we not let them join the church until they can petition government to get off the list? How about not get a lawyer? How about the Sixth Amendment? How about you can't get a lawyer until you petition the government to get off the list? Or my favorite, how about the Eighth Amendment? We're going to subject you to cruel and unusual punishment until you petition the government to get off the list. Is there another constitutional right that we treat the same way for American citizens that we do the Second Amendment? Can you think of one? Can you think of one?
I don't have an answer for you, sir.
All right, well, I'm out of time.
So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of a serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, the First Lady, and Chelsea Clinton.
Information regarding everybody, let's get out of here now. What's the electricity on?
I can see it looks like part of the building has been blown away. We'll have to bank around to the other side so I can get a better view of it. The explosion went off around 9 a.m. and we could feel the explosion in the newsroom of Channel 9, at least 5 miles from downtown.
As the chopper goes around the side of the federal building,
wow.
Look at that shot.
Holy
It is
cow.
absolutely incredible. The side of the federal building has been blown off, Jesse.
About a third.
This morning.
Well, I have a window that looks directly at the World Trade Center, and I saw this huge explosion. I was with a group of people, and I really couldn't even believe it. And even, I think, worse than that, for years I've looked right directly at the building. This was an unbelievably powerful building. If you know anything about structure, it was one of the first buildings that was built from the outside. The steel, the reason the World Trade Center had such narrow windows is that in between all the windows, you had the steel on the outside. So you had the steel on the outside of the building. That's why when I first looked, and you had big, heavy I-beams, when I first looked at it, I couldn't believe it because there was a hole in the steel. And this is steel that was, you remember the width of the windows in the World Trade Center, folks. I think you know, if you were ever up there, they were quite narrow. And in between was this heavy steel. I said, how could a plane, even a 767 or 747 or whatever it might have been, how could it possibly go through the steel? I happen to think that they had not only a plane, but they had bombs that exploded almost simultaneously, because I just can't imagine anything being able to go through that wall.
According to what are apparently high-level sources within the Department of Justice, in 2017, the FBI secretly began an investigation into whether the president is, in fact, a Russian agent. The FBI apparently believed that President Trump could be a one-man sleeper cell, personally taking direct orders from his handlers in Moscow and working from within the Oval Office to subvert this country.
And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames.
What we discovered was that the Stasi in East Germany was probably the closest we have come to the totalitarian police state evoked by George Orwell in his book 1984.
Why did the FBI establish the InfraGard program, and what was the organization's initial goal?
Well, it was established back in 1996 in our Cleveland office. Initially, it was established to address issues relating to cybercrime and to establish a network of companies who were concerned about cyber issues. And of course, since then, it has grown.
More than 23,000 representatives of private industry are working quietly in collaboration with the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. This according to an exclusive report in the Progressive magazine. The business leaders form a group known as InfraGard that receives warnings of terrorist threats directly from the FBI before the public does. In return, they provide information to the government. According to one whistleblower, the FBI has given members of InfraGard permission to shoot to kill in the event of martial law.
Several years, there were only 1,700 members after 9/11, and now there are 23,000 members. And the FBI director said, "You're our first line of defense." That's what he told these business people. You know, this is a secretive organization. They're not supposed to talk to the press. You need to get vetted by the FBI before you can join it. They get almost daily information that the public doesn't get. And then they have these extraordinary, really astonishing powers being vested in them by FBI and Homeland Security. Shoot-to-kill powers. I mean, this is scary stuff.
And Sarah, so what your report is saying here is you had an ex-Intel contractor suing Comey, saying that the FBI, on a mass scale, covered up mass civil liberties violations against Americans, and he has evidence. Isn't that a little bit bigger than Russia collusion with no evidence, as I just proved up to this point?
With the technology that he had, with the NSA, over 20 million Americans, 600 million documents. He said if you stack those up, that's 30 miles high. 30 miles high, but over 20 million Americans. And I said, well, what was it you were unmasking? He said everything, from their bank accounts, their homes, their records, phone conversations, emails. He was able to take down every single firewall. And it was so distressing because, you know, this is what he was directed to do. And when he tried to do the right thing, and he did, in his opinion, the right thing and got the immunity agreement from the FBI decided to not move forward.
What this story pulls back the curtain on is a set of tools that I truly did not know were available to the most powerful men in this country when they are bent on stopping allegations against them.
This is an agreement between the American people and its government. We are going to, we the American people give certain powers to government to keep us safe. And when those powers are misused, and the motive is not criminal investigations or national security, then I'll bet you my fellow citizens are rethinking their side of the equation. Because that U.S. citizen could be them next time. It could be you. It could be me. It could be anyone, until we start seriously investigating and prosecuting what Congress thought was serious enough to attach a 10-year felony to.
It was called mind hacking. So they're trying to hack a targeted individual, and the targeted individual will create mental defenses as best as they can. They'll go to their social networks. Well, what do? They try to disrupt the social network, so you have no family or friends. It's a back and forth game that they're trying to find out the maximum probability of death, and the example that you used, where you'll commit suicide or you'll harm somebody, become a Manchurian candidate.
November 20th, 2014. It's a day many will never forget in Tallahassee and beyond. What started out as a night of studying in a college library turned to tragedy because of one man, Myron May. May believed he was a victim of gang stalking. Well, tonight you'll hear from May in his own chilling words, pleading for anyone to understand him as we examine just what is gang stalking.
Kind of my last words. It's really unfortunate that I have to make this video. You see, I am a victim of covert harassment and electronic harassment and gang stalking. I'm what's called a targeted individual.
On November 20th, 2014.
For now, things seem to be back to normal on campus. Students have fallen back into their routines, but it was here not so long ago on a tragic night that has many wondering what could make a man snap and lose control.
What causes a seemingly well-liked guy to plan a mass murder? Is it mental illness, or as many suggests, being a victim of gang stalking?
The goal of gang stalking is literally to drive a targeted individual crazy.
If you search gang stalking on the internet, you can find thousands of people all over the world describing similar circumstances. Those who feel they are victims of gang stalking truly believe people are out to get them.
They employ isolation tactics. They basically try to convince your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers that they should be keeping an eye on you.
Private investigator Scott Ross trying to unlock a mystery. Why would one man
$495 price tag
have weapons like this?
Clip holsters.
Holsters, gun locks, cleaners, casings.
It's just one box. And there are hundreds.
That's an understatement. Police seized 1,200 firearms in this upscale Pacific Palisades townhome. That's right, 1,200 pristine new guns, some with the tags still on them. Officers also found nearly 7 tons, yes, tons of ammunition, the largest weapon seizure from one home that the LAPD recalls. That's not all police found. Piles of cash, $230,000. As to what he planned to do with it all, we may never know. That's because Jeffrey Allen Lash, age 60, was found in this SUV just outside his condo, decomposing there for more than 2 weeks. Lash's life, intensely private, became public when his fiancée called lawyer Harlan Braun.
I just assumed that she was a crazy lady who was coming up with some bizarre story.
The story, as she told it, Lash worked for multiple secret government spy agencies. He collected weapons. Lash also suffered from cancer. And as it turns out, his fiancée is the one who helped him into the car, putting a blanket over his body. When he died, Lash promised his fiancée his, quote, people would take care of everything, taking away his body and his guns.
Specifically the Jones case, which is a Supreme Court ruling where they ruled 9-0 that a GPS device placed on a vehicle for an extended period of time was an unreasonable search. Geolocation is broadly defined as using a GPS device or triangulation so that you can tell the specific whereabouts of where a particular phone is.
That's a question I'd have to get back to you on. I had not thought about that.
We submitted in advance our questions that we were going to ask here today, in part so I could have a candid dialogue with you. We were very good at providing the questions that I was going to ask. With all due respect, sir, you're the director of the FBI. You've been there for 12 years. Then the standard for attaching tracking devices to cars under Jones.
I have to get back to you on that.
Can you tell me some basics? Can you tell me how many agents, investigators you've assigned to the case?
May be able to do that, but I'd have to get back to you.
Can you tell me who the lead investigator is?
Off the top of my head, no.
This is the most important issue in front of the country the last 6 weeks. You don't know who's heading up the case? Who the lead investigator is?
At this juncture, no.
I'm saying, why were people targeted before the investigation started? The terms Tea Party, Patriot, 9/12 were used to identify groups and put them on a list. So did the FBI contact any of these same victims? Were they contacted by the FBI prior to the investigation when these same groups were applying for tax-exempt status? Did the FBI pay some of these individuals a visit?
I do not know.
Pardon?
I do not know.
You don't know?
I do not know.
Some of them testified that they were paid a visit by the FBI. Specifically, Catherine Engelbrecht in Texas said she was visited by the FBI. She was head of True the Vote.
Not being familiar with it, I can't.
In your time as an investigator, is that how you would do interviews with the boss sitting next to the person you're trying to get information from?
Well, again,
Is it appropriate for Holly, the Inspector General came out in a transcribed interview that our staff has done, the Oversight Committee staff has done, is it appropriate to have her collect the data and give it to the Inspector General? Is it appropriate when the Inspector General is doing his investigation, doing his audit, to give information to the very people he's investigating in the course of the investigation and not share that same information with the Oversight Committee?
The American Civil Liberties Union is filing coordinated Freedom of Information Act requests involving about 30 ACLU local offices where we're trying to get information about what type of information the FBI is collecting through this new type of investigation they claim to be authorized to conduct that targets.
Can you say why America is the greatest country in the world?
Diversity and opportunity.
Lewis? Freedom and freedom. So let's keep it that way.
Well, why is America
not the greatest country in the world, Professor? That's my answer. You're saying...
Yes. Let's talk about...
Fine. Sharon, the NEA is a loser. Yeah, it accounts for a penny out of our paycheck, but he gets to hit you with it anytime he wants. It doesn't cost money. It costs votes. It costs airtime and column inches. You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always? Hey. And with a straight face, you're going to tell students that America is so star-spangled awesome that we're the only ones in the world who have freedom? Canada has freedom. Japan has freedom. The UK, France, Italy, Germany, Spain, Australia, Belgium has freedom. So 207 sovereign states in the world, like 180 of them have freedom.
All right.
And yet you, sorority girl, just in case you accidentally wander into a voting booth one day, there's some things you should know. And one of them is, there is absolutely no evidence to support the statement that we're the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, number 4 in labor force, and number 4 in exports. We lead the world in only 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, number of adults who believe angels are real, and defense spending, where we spend more than the next 26 countries combined, 25 of whom are allies. Now, none of this is the fault of a 20-year-old college student, but you nonetheless are, without a doubt, a member of the worst generation ever. So when you ask what makes us the greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Yosemite? Sure used to be. We stood up for what was right. We fought for moral reasons. We passed laws, struck down laws for moral reasons. We waged wars on poverty, not poor people. We sacrificed. We cared about our neighbors. We put our money where our mouths were, and we never beat our chest. We built great big things, made ungodly technological advances, explored the universe, cured diseases, and we cultivated the world's greatest artists and the world's greatest economy. We reached for the stars, acted like men. We aspired to intelligence. We didn't belittle it. It didn't make us feel inferior. We didn't identify ourselves by who we voted for in the last election, and we didn't scare so easy. We were able to be all these things and do all these things because we were informed by great men, men who were revered. First step in solving any problem is recognizing there is one. America is not the greatest country in the world anymore.